Stacy burst into my kitchen, as usual, without knocking, like a breathless sparrow bringing spring in the middle of a dreary November. She smelled of cheap drugstore perfume and nervous excitement. She tossed her faded nylon jacket onto a chair, the same one she'd worn since our teens, and plopped onto the stool across from me, sighing happily. I was sipping my evening Earl Grey tea, staring into the dark window where a fine rain wept, smearing street-light reflections across the wet glass. "Lena, you won't believe it. Seriously, you won't." I slowly set down my cup. Stacy's life was a series of these exclamations, usually followed by minor dramas or fleeting joys. We'd been friends since first grade, sat at the same desk, shared homework notes, sandwiches and secrets. Later we went to community college together. I became an accountant, neat and unobtrusive, like the numbers in my spreadsheets. Stacy fluttered through life, switching jobs and men with a lightness that both fascinated and unnerved me. She'd been a convenience store clerk, a salon receptionist, even tried selling violets. Nothing stuck, not money, not men, not even the violets, which somehow wilted from neglect. I was her safe harbor, her therapist, her shoulder to cry on, and sometimes her emergency lender. I married Greg, my steady, reliable engineer, had a son, and our life flowed predictably, like a wide river. Stacy stayed single in her tiny one-bedroom apartment with its leaky faucet and faded floral wallpaper. She'd often come over evenings, lament her loneliness, and eat half the cake I'd baked for the weekend. "So what happened? Did your upstairs neighbor flood you again?" I asked, already knowing it wasn't that. Her eyes shone brighter than when she'd won $100 in the lottery. "No, better. Lena, I think I'm in love," she whispered, her round face usually pinched with discontent melting into a blissful smile that smoothed the fine lines around her eyes. Can you believe it? At 42. I smiled back, sincerely. I'd always wished her real happiness, not the fleeting kind. Someone to see past her flakiness to her genuinely kind heart. "Tell me, who is he? Where'd you meet?" And she launched in, breathless and disjointed as always. They'd met by chance in the park. She was brooding on a bench. He asked for the time. One thing led to another. A classic, almost corny meet-cute I didn't quite buy. Stacy met men everywhere, but never this predictably, more likely at the deli counter or on a crowded bus. But I didn't interrupt. He's so... She pressed her hands to her chest, searching for words. "Smart, Lena. When he talks, you just listen." And so thoughtful. He noticed right away I was down. Bought me coffee from a vending machine. Can you believe it? We walked for hours. I forgot about dinner. Her description was vague, tall. Dark hair, kind eyes, quiet voice, slightly raspy, strong hands with long fingers. He told her about stars, books he'd read, his job something with blueprints and machinery. "An engineer?" I asked, pouring her tea. "Yes, exactly. How'd you know? Blueprints, machinery?" "Greg's an engineer." "I know the type." A cold, unpleasant suspicion uncurled in my chest. Just a flicker. How many quiet-voiced, stargazing engineers existed? Millions. I brushed it aside like a bothersome fly. "And he's so romantic," Stacy chattered on, oblivious. "Walked me all the way home. Got my number. He called today. We're seeing a movie tomorrow. Lena, I'm freaking out. I have nothing to wear. Everything's old or stupid." She rambled while I watched her, struck by life's strangeness. Here I was, the picture of stability, married, settled, domestic, yet I sat alone drinking tea, son at his grandma's, husband working late, as usual. And here was my chaotic Stacy, glowing with anticipation, her whole world orbiting this mysterious engineer. "He told me this joke yesterday," she giggled. "A spy joke. You know how Greg loves those? About how the spy tried to light a fireplace, and an hour later the fireplace drowned. The suspicion in my chest turned to ice. That joke, that old tired joke Greg had told me just 2 nights ago at dinner. He'd found it in some old magazine and was absurdly proud. I'd snorted, called it lame. He'd sulked, said I had no sense of humor. I set my cup down. My hand trembled slightly, sloshing tea into the saucer. "Interesting joke," I said, my voice unnaturally flat. "Did he mention his name?" Stacy suddenly fidgeted, looked away. "He did. But, Lena, don't be mad, okay? He asked me not to tell anyone yet. You know how it is. New relationship. Fragile. Says happiness loves silence. Happiness loves silence." Greg had repeated that phrase in our early years. When we scrimped for a down payment on our condo, when I darned his socks and he unloaded freight cars nights, our hard-won happiness that supposedly needed quiet. The kitchen suddenly felt claustrophobic, Stacy's cheap perfume mixed with bergamot, turning my stomach. The pieces clicked. Ugly details wove a pattern I desperately didn't want to see. Tall engineer, quiet voice, love of stars and old jokes, refusing to share his name, and Stacy's guilt. She was lying, badly, childishly, as always. She knew I'd figure it out, or maybe deep down wanted me to. I remembered Greg's recent late nights, how he hid his phone screen down, the faint sweet scent of cheap perfume clinging to him sometimes. I'd blamed colleagues, crowded subways. I hadn't wanted to see, because my life was precise like his blueprints and any stray line would ruin the geometry. "Lena, you're so pale," Stacy finally noticed, concern cutting through her daze. "You okay?" I looked at her, her happy, foolish face. Her bitten nails, her dime-store earrings, I felt no hatred, just immense, crushing weariness, and a cold curiosity like watching a bad play to see how the farce ends. I stood slowly. "You're right," I said, my voice sounding alien, raspy. "You have nothing to wear. Come on." She blinked, surprised. "Where?" "My room. We'll find you something for tomorrow." She beamed, instantly forgetting my pallor. Rummaging through my things was her guilty pleasure. My clothes were better, pricier, classier, symbols of a life she'd never had. We entered mine and Greg's bedroom. It smelled of him, his aftershave, his sleep. I walked to the large wardrobe we'd bought for our second anniversary and opened it. My life hung in neat rows. Sensible work dresses, one nice dress for rare theater outings, a comfortable robe. Here. I took down a coffee-colored silk dress, bought last month, unworn, waiting for a special occasion. "Try it. It'll suit you," Stacy gasped. She took it like it was treasure. The silk shimmered, making her old sweater look shabbier. "Lena, it's new and expensive." "I can't." "You can." I cut her off. "A date is a special occasion." "Go on, try it." She shucked off her sweater and jeans, clumsily wriggling into the dress. It fit her almost perfectly. The color highlighted her blonde hair and blue eyes. She turned to the full-length mirror on the wardrobe door and froze. Reflected was a different woman, not dowdy Stacy the clerk, but someone elegant, almost beautiful. "Wow," she breathed. "Not enough," I said, caught in the momentum. "You need shoes." I opened the bottom dresser drawer and pulled out my Italian pumps with the modest heel, the ones Greg gave me for my birthday, saying my queen deserves royal shoes. I'd worn them twice. They pinched, but I endured it for him. They fit Stacy perfectly. And a bag. My voice was calm, businesslike. I felt like a director dressing my lead actress. This clutch, very chic. I handed her a small suede bag. The transformation was complete. Stacy twirled before the mirror, dazzled. She coyly showed off her foot in my shoe, adjusted the dress's collar. She was trying on my life. And she loved it. "Lena, thank you." She rushed to hug me, but I stepped back. "Wait, one more thing." I walked to the vanity. Bottles of lotions and creams stood in neat lines. In the center, like a king, sat the heavy crystal bottle of French perfume Greg had brought back from his only overseas trip. I saved it for major occasions. The scent was rich, woody, slightly bitter, the smell of our best years. I picked up the bottle. It was cold and heavy. "Wear this," I said, handing it to Stacy. "He loves this scent." Finally, she sensed something. Her smile faltered, then slid off her face. She looked from the bottle to me. Fear flickered in her eyes. "Len, how do you know?" I smirked. The first time all evening, crookedly, joylessly. I know a lot, Stace. For instance, I know your engineer has a tiny mole on his left wrist. He shyly hides under his watch strap. I know he hates cooked onions in soup and always fishes them out. And I know when he lies, he rubs the tip of his nose. Watch for that tomorrow. I watched the color drain from her face. She turned white as the wardrobe. The dress that had made her elegant now hung on her like a sack. She stared at me, wide-eyed and terrified, like a rabbit facing a snake. She opened her mouth but couldn't make a sound. I continued. I needed to finish this scene. So take it. Take the dress. Take the shoes. Take the perfume. You need to look perfect. After all, you're going on a date with my husband. Can't show up looking cheap. I pressed the cold bottle into her limp hand. She flinched, as if shocked, and nearly dropped it. I didn't know. Lena, honest. He said you barely lived together. That he was free. She babbled, her voice trembling. Of course you didn't, I nodded with icy calm. Now you do, and it changes nothing. The date's still on, right? He'll be waiting. He'd be upset if you didn't come. And don't forget your hair. Go to the salon on the corner tomorrow morning. The new stylist is good. Say I sent you. She'll give you a discount. I turned and walked back to the kitchen. I heard her standing in the bedroom amid the scattered clothes. I sat at the table and picked up my cold teacup. My hands no longer shook. Inside me was a ringing, frozen emptiness, all feeling flash-frozen, no pain, no anger, just the understanding that my precise, blueprint-perfect life was gone. Someone had taken an eraser to its main lines. Minutes later she entered the kitchen, back in her old sweater. My dress, shoes, and bag lay discarded on the bedroom floor. She placed the perfume bottle on the table. "I'm not going," she whispered, not looking at me. "Suit yourself," I shrugged. "Your choice." She stood a moment longer, then silently put on her jacket and left without saying goodbye. I heard the front door close. I sat in the kitchen a long time. The rain stopped. A single watery star appeared. I stared at it, thinking nothing. Then I stood, picked up the perfume bottle Stacy had left, opened it, and generously spritzed my wrists and neck. The scent enveloped me in a bitter, woody cloud, the smell of my past life. Around midnight, Greg returned, tired, slightly sheepish. He rubbed the tip of his nose. "Sorry I'm late. Stupid meeting ran over." He moved to kiss me but froze, sniffing. "You wore perfume? My favorite?" "Yes," I replied, looking him straight in the eye. "Decided to give myself a treat." He smiled, confused and a little foolish. He understood nothing, and maybe never would. I looked at him, a reliable, steady husband, and for the first time in 20 years saw him clearly, not as a husband, not as a father, but simply as a man. Tired, aging, with weaknesses and a small lie hidden behind a stupid meeting. And I suddenly knew I wouldn't make a scene. I wouldn't confront him or kick anyone out. That would be too easy, too cliched. I would simply go on living. But it would be a different life. One with the bitter aftertaste of French perfume and the knowledge that even the most precise blueprint can be ruined by one wrong line. Or perhaps that crooked, imperfect line is what finally makes it real. Mark. The night passed without dreams, or maybe they came, but my mind, protectively, barred them from memory like unwelcome guests. I woke a minute before the alarm, jolted by some internal signal. Before, it was duty time to make breakfast, see Greg off. Now it was something else. A sentry taking post, with no room for weakness. Greg slept beside me, turned toward the wall. His back, once my unshakable fortress, now looked like the tired back of a middle-aged man. A familiar mole, like a tiny dried leaf, marked his shoulder blade. I felt nothing. The frozen emptiness inside hadn't left. It was part of me now, like a new organ I never knew existed. I rose silently. The French perfume bottle stood on the vanity. Yesterday's scent had faded, leaving only a faint trace on my skin, like the memory of an execution. I picked it up, sniffed. The smell no longer hurt. It was just a smell. a chemical formula in glass. I tucked it into the back of a drawer under old tablecloths. Its role in this play was over. In the kitchen, I moved on autopilot, boiled the kettle, got eggs and cheese from the fridge. My motions were robotic. I watched my hands slicing bread, cracking eggs, pouring to marveling at their obedience, while my real self watched from a distant tower, seeing the kitchen, my past life, the rubble of my future. Greg entered as the eggs hit the plates, sleepy, rumpled, in his stretched-out shirt. He rubbed his nose-tip, a habit that now seemed not endearing, but a liar's ugly brand. "Morning," he mumbled, sitting down. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I answered, setting his plate down. My voice was flat, indifferent. He stabbed the yolk. It burst obediently, spreading orange over the white. Greg liked sunny side up, but only with runny yolks. Another detail in the portrait I was now repainting, unvarnished, unsentimental. "You seemed off last night," he said, eyes on his plate. "With the perfume." What was the occasion? No occasion, I shrugged, sipping tea. Felt like it. "Does a woman need a reason?" He grunted, appeased. He wasn't one to question motives deeply. Easier to accept any explanation, however flimsy. Safer. For him. "Stacy dropped by yesterday?" he asked suddenly. I felt the cup tremble in my hand and gripped it tighter. She did. What did she want? I looked him straight in the eye. Only lazy curiosity there. No anxiety, no fear. He didn't know. Not yet. Not. "Oh, nothing much." I allowed a faint, icy smile. "Wanted to borrow a dress for a date. Said she's in love. With some engineer. Can you believe it?" I watched him. His fork froze midair. A shadow passed over his face light, fleeting, like a summer cloud. He recovered quickly, but I saw it. I saw everything now. "An engineer?" His voice tightened slightly. "Well, happens. Good for her. She's been alone a while." That's what I said. I nodded, savoring my cruel game. "I told her go for it, can't pass up happiness like that. Even gave her my best dress, and shoes, and perfume. The works. So the man would be impressed. He ate the rest of his eggs in silence, asked no more questions. But I saw his jaw tense, how he avoided my gaze. My words hit their mark. He was thinking, piecing it together. Why hadn't Stacy shown? Why was Lena telling him this with that smirk? He was adrift, and his confusion gave me a cold, grim satisfaction. The first point in this long, silent game was mine. As he left for work, he paused at the door. "Meeting with college buddies tonight. Be late." He rubbed his nose tip again. Before, I'd have believed him. Or pretended to. Now I just nodded. "Okay. Don't wait up." The door closed. I was alone in the silent apartment. The quiet no longer oppressed me. It was my ally. I walked through our home, the living room with its bargain bin wall unit, the kids' room, still plastered with cartoon posters despite our son thinking he was grown, our bedroom. I opened the wardrobe. My coffee dress lay on the floor, shoes and clutch beside it like shed snakeskin. I carefully hung the dress, boxed the shoes. They were no longer symbols of betrayal, just props from yesterday's play. Work was my sanctuary. The world of numbers, spreadsheets, balances, everything logical, correct, predictable. Debits matched credits. Errors were visible and fixable. It gave me control, sorely lacking elsewhere. But that day was different. Numbers blurred, lost meaning. Lost. I saw Stacy's terrified face instead of columns, saw Greg's confusion at breakfast. I tried focusing, recounted lines repeatedly, but my thoughts drifted back to last night. My boss, Antonia, sharp-eyed behind horn-rimmed glasses, shot me concerned looks. "Lena, everything all right? You seem distracted." "Fine, Antonia. Just a headache. Probably the weather." A lie. But lying was my new reality. I lied to Greg, to colleagues, to myself, pretending I was in control. At lunch I skipped the cafeteria, wandered the streets. The November air was damp and cold. I walked aimlessly, watching strangers, shop windows, grey buildings. For the first time in years I felt utterly alien in this city, this life. I thought of Stacy. Our lifelong friendship, we'd been close as trees from the same root, known everything about each other, or so I thought. When had it fractured? When did she decide she could trample our friendship for a phantom chance with my husband? Envy of my settled life? Desperation from her loneliness? I didn't excuse her, but I felt no burning hatred, only bitterness, like cheap counterfeit wine, bitterness that someone I'd trusted most could do this. It betrayed not just me, but our shared past, childhood secrets, teenage dreams, countless cups of tea at my kitchen table. She trampled it all. And Greg, my steady Greg, what had he sought in my friend's arms? Novelty, excitement, a chance to feel young and desired. Stacy was my opposite, noisy, impulsive, impractical. She embodied the chaos Greg feared in daily life, but secretly craved, tired of predictability. He wanted fireworks. I offered only the steady glow of home, a glow that had bored him. I ducked into a cafe, ordered coffee. Watching passers-by, I realized each had secrets, pain, skeletons. That elderly couple holding hands, maybe they'd cheated for decades, but built an illusion of happiness. That young woman laughing into her phone, maybe she cried herself to sleep. My story wasn't unique. It was banal, like that tired spy joke, and that banality made it bitterer. Back at work, a bouquet lay on my desk, 3 red roses in crackly cellophane. No card. Antonia smiled knowingly. Husband spoiling you? Good man. I didn't reply. I knew who they were from. Greg, a clumsy peace offering for the lie about his meeting. He thought I knew nothing. Tried buying forgiveness with roses. Before I'd have melted. Put them in my best vase. Breathed their scent. Felt loved. Now I looked at them with cold disgust. They seemed garish, cheap, the red petals like blood. I picked them up, walked to the trash bin, and dropped them in unopened. Antonia gasped. I returned to my desk, opened a file, and said to no one, "Can't stand roses, allergic." I worked with feverish concentration for the rest of the day. Numbers obeyed again. Debits met credits. Order reigned in my small accounting world. That was all that mattered now. That evening, the phone's ring shattered the apartment's silence like a gunshot. I knew who it was, an unfamiliar number, but I was sure. Stacy, calling from somewhere else, afraid I'd ignore her home number. I stared at the screen, listening to the insistent trill. Part of me wanted to hang up, sever the last thread, but the cold, curious part that awoke yesterday won. I had to see this through. "Hello? Lena? It's me, Stacy." Her voice was small, breaking. Street noise hummed behind her, a payphone. I figured. My tone was arctic. "Len, I'm sorry, I'm such an idiot. I don't know what got into me." She started crying. Soft, childlike sobs. Once they'd moved me to comfort her. Now I listened with indifference. "Is that why you called? To say you're an idiot?" "I already knew that." "No, I want to explain. It wasn't like that. He told me things. Said you barely lived together, said he was getting divorced. I believed him, Lena, honest." "Of course you did," I scoffed. "Believing what's convenient is your special talent, Stace. You always believed each job was the one. Believed each man was the love of your life. Why not believe your best friend's husband was suddenly free? So convenient, that's not true. I never wanted to hurt you." "What did you want, Stacy?" Metal edged my voice. "To comfort the poor, neglected husband, build your happiness on my ruins, or just try on my life since yours never worked." The dress suited you, by the way. Silence on the line. Only her ragged breathing and traffic. You knew," she whispered finally. "You knew, and you did it on purpose." "Did what?" I cut in. "Let you feel like a queen for one night? Give you a shot with the man of your dreams? I set you up for your big date. You walked away." "You're cruel," she breathed. "No," I said calmly. "I just stopped being a fool. Unlike some. Don't call me again, Stacy. Not from this number, not from any number. Our friendship ended last night in my kitchen." "You killed it." I pressed end. Didn't slam the phone. Just severed the connection. Neatly, finally, like an accountant closing an account. I went to the kitchen for water. My hands were steady, heartbeat even, no triumph, no spite, just emptiness. And a strange liberation, like shedding a heavy years-old weight, the weight of a friendship I now saw had long been toxic, poisoning me with pity, obligation, and irritation. Greg came home late that night, smelling of booze and guilt. No lie about college buddies. He just walked past me to the bedroom and fell onto the bed, fully dressed. I said nothing. Lying beside him in the dark, listening to his heavy breathing, I knew a chasm lay between us now, not inches of mattress, but miles of lies, betrayal, and unspoken words. I didn't know if a bridge could cross it, or if I even wanted one. The next few days became a silent ballet. Greg and I moved through the apartment like ghosts, avoiding eye contact. We spoke only essentials. Past the Salt Sun call? Rent's due tomorrow. The air crackled. One wrong word could spark a storm. Greg was clearly rattled, jumpy. Constantly checked his phone, scowling when no expected message appeared. Stacy had obviously cut him off. He was trapped. The old life with quiet, predictable Lena no longer satisfied. The new, passionate one with Stacy had vanished. He was stranded between worlds. He made clumsy attempts to connect. One evening he brought home my favorite coconut cream pie, set it on the table with a guilty smile. Let's have tea. Like old times. Old times were gone. I looked from the pie to him. Thanks. Not hungry. Watching my weight. He watched, bewildered, as I left the room. He didn't grasp it wasn't about diet. His offerings, his belated attentions were worthless now. Fake as tinsel. Shiny outside, hollow inside. I observed him with the cold curiosity of a scientist studying a lab rat. Saw his confusion, fear, desperate pretense that all was fine. It gave me strength. I was no longer the victim. I held the power. I knew the truth. Knowledge is power. The confrontation came Saturday. Our son was at my parents' country house. We were alone. The apartment's silence grew deafening. Greg paced like a caged animal. Finally he snapped. He sat opposite me at the kitchen table, the same table where a blissful Stacy had chattered days before. Lena, we need to talk. He sounded resolute, but his voice betrayed him. Oh? I raised an eyebrow. About the weather. Stop it. He winced. You know. So. He'd confess. Not from guilt, because silence and uncertainty had become unbearable. He wanted an outcome, even if it meant a fight. What exactly do I know, Greg? I held his gaze. I wanted him to say the words. He looked away, rubbed his nose again. About me. And Stacy. He said it so softly I barely heard, as if speaking it aloud would shatter our fragile world. Ah, that. I waved a dismissive hand. Yeah, I know. So? He stared, dumbfounded. He'd expected tears, screams, accusations, flying dishes. Not this icy so. It threw him off script. How? So? He stammered. I cheated on you with your best friend. First, I stated crisply, ticking points off a finger, she's not my friend anymore. Second, yes, you cheated. Unpleasant, I agree. But honestly, not the end of the world. People do worse. I spoke calmly, rationally, like in a budget meeting. My composure scared him more than hysteria ever could. But why didn't you say anything? Genuine confusion colored his voice. What should I have done? Thrown a fit? Kicked you out? Filed for divorce? Too easy, Greg. Too cliched. You'd have run off to her, the poor misunderstood soul, building your happiness while trashing me. No, I wasn't giving you that gift. I stood and walked to the window. Kids played outside. Life went on. I don't understand. What do you want? I turned, looked at him. My husband. The man I'd lived with for 20 years. For the first time, I saw neither anchor nor enemy. Just a weak, confused man. I don't want anything, Greg. That's the point. Before, I wanted a solid family, a faithful husband, a cozy home. I wanted our life to be a perfect blueprint, all straight lines. Then I realized perfect blueprints don't exist. Any structure has flaws, Cracks, wrong lines. You can live with that. Patch the cracks, adjust the lines, or just accept them. Part of the design. He was silent, processing. So, what happens now? Nothing, I shrugged. We go on. You to your job, me to mine. Weekends at the country house, son visits on breaks, everything stays the same. Outwardly. But inside? Everything's different. You'll live knowing I know. Every lie, every betrayal. I'll live knowing my reliable, steady husband isn't. We've both lost our illusions. Maybe that's better. Maybe only without illusions can you live truthfully. I spoke, surprising myself. The words came from my new, cold emptiness. A brutal truth, but the truth. So if you want, you can stay. I finished. The door's open, but know this. I make the rules now. You get no second chances. One misstep and the blueprint gets shredded. Your choice. I sat down, waited. His move. Our future hung on his next words. He was silent a long time, stared at breadcrumbs on the tablecloth. I saw fear, shame, relief, maybe resentment warring within him. Finally, he looked up. No love in his eyes, but something new, a bitter understanding and perhaps respect. I'll stay, he said quietly. I nodded. Didn't say good, or I'm glad, just noted his decision. The game wasn't over. It had entered a new protracted phase, the end game, where I held the positional advantage. Months later, life settled into a new groove. Strange, damaged, but a groove. Greg and I became like war veterans sharing quarters, bound not by love, but by shared trauma. He became surprisingly attentive. Helped around the house, asked about my day, stopped working late, trying to earn forgiveness through deeds, not words. I accepted it but kept my distance. A glass wall stood between us, transparent, unbreakable. We could see but not touch. I saw Stacy one spring day, coming out of the corner salon, the one I'd recommended. She had a new haircut, thinner, drawn, wearing a drab grey coat. She saw me and froze. Fear, shame, longing flashed across her face. I didn't look away. Met her eyes calmly, without hate, like a stranger. We stood like that for eternal seconds. Then I gave a slight, impersonal nod like to any passerby and walked on without looking back. I didn't know, and didn't care, what was in her eyes then. Her story, for me, was over. Sometimes evenings when Greg slept, I'd stand by the window and look at the stars. The ones he'd loved telling Stacy about, cold, distant, indifferent. I felt a strange kinship. I'd become like them. My life continued. But there was no room left for naive faith in perfect blueprints or happiness that loved silence. My new happiness was different. It was in knowing, in control, in the cold, clear emptiness where nothing could hurt anymore. And maybe that's all adult life is, life without anesthesia.